And it's like some idiot someone want to stop them from get a piece of the pie. Oh, I'm to no disrespect, could go and die. Hear me now? Kia Bamba, them up dubs, we play fast, I play slow, them up flows. Like nobody knows, them kill soul, no sound clash and dance all. And mash up stage shows, but some guys don't recognize, I realize.
Welcome to Only Friends on a Power Day, your one-stop spot for all things snow, mountain and travel. Get all you need to know about epic destinations, inspiring stories from local legends from all around the globe. Creators, entrepreneurs, brands, owners and more. We're here to talk about what's hot, what's changing the game, what's incoming. Come along for the ride, froth out, and let's have a bloody good time doing it. So, EP1. We're here to talk about my better half story and how she became to live a big journey in the snow. I guess, it started for us both when we met at Falls Creek and Elyshia started to work for me. I was her boss. However, my story is probably going to get explained a lot more with the illustrious co-host who is missing in action, currently dealing with a hangover in Japan, I'd imagine. So, Elyshia, please take it away and start to explain what got you to this amazing place.
I'm not going to go too deep into the background pre-snow because that's what you're here for. But essentially, live the hustle, still living the hustle. But relocated from WA a very long time ago. Won't tell you how long ago, but a long time ago, whilst I was working corporate for L'Oreal in the professional products division. Loved that life, but definitely burned the candle at both ends in my mid to late 20s. Grew up surfing, a lot of snowboarding in my 20s, did what we snowfolk all do. Went off for a quick one season at Falls, did that one season, of course got hooked, did another season. Then after the 12-month leave of absence they gave me, I was like, I'm not going back. I am going to keep doing this thing. So I went back to Falls and kind of never looked back. But essentially I did that first season, broke my wrist, met another amazing human who's part of our family. Our kids already call him Uncle Tomo, who will...
Just quickly, I'm staying hydrated today with the wonderful Blackman's Brewery Juicy Banger. It's a full-bodied, like an IPA, but an IP lager. Sorry to interrupt. But...
I have an Isla, not sponsored, because just discovered this. Delicious.
I'm thirsty. Sorry. Please continue.
Anyway, back to my story. Broke my arm, hand, wrist aggressively in the park at Falls. Housemate was like, there's no way you could have broken your hand. Looked at it, was like, Jesus, don't look at that. The illustrious Tomo arrived and read me all of the park rules. Then my housemate arrived from ski patrol on the skidoo, where I begged to not go in the banana sled down to the medical centre.
Just a background on that. There will be an episode with the Lord Tomo coming up soon. He ended up being long-term operations manager in our business in Japan and a long-term friend from Falls Creek. Shout out to you, Tomo. We love you.
And begged both of them to not have to go on the banana and go on the sled, but was told, you've had the green whistle, you are 100% going on the sled. Oh, sorry, in the banana sled. So there was that. So I was like, I'm not done here yet. I had to spend a lot of power days sitting inside with a broken arm. And then I thought, I'm not done. So I actually got a job at what was previously known as SCORE, now Palisades. That fell through because they decided to prioritise instructors for that particular visa. So our great friend Crispy, who maybe we should get on it sometime, actually.
Yes, great ski maker.
Absolute legend. I ended up in Colorado working in a ski shop. And what do you know? decided to be a hero and boost down a not very exciting run at clocked 100 k's an hour. Destroyed fib, cartilage, everything in my ankle. Surgeon's words where it now looks like a chewed carpet. So yeah, there went that season as well. Ended up shredding again. That's a whole nother side story. Later that season, ended up in Tahoe. Had a fab time.
Let's just touch on that. Elyshia had to leave the country at that point, which was America, got flown home, and then was so determined not for her season to end.
Because I did this in early December, so very
That
early in the season.
She went home, stopped drinking, went full.
No soda, no caffeinated, no caffeine, no booze, nothing.
And ended up going back and getting back on the board later that winter, which is one of the reasons why I think I kind of ended up liking her a bit, because she's bloody determined.
So yeah, ended up in Tahoe and finished off that season there and was like, I need to do an injury-free season. Don't know if I've had one of those yet, but no critical breaks since then. And yeah, kind of started getting paid again from L'Oreal in like June or July. I was like, this is nice. I was like, I'm going to end up having to pay this back. So yeah, anyway, they denied any sort of form of extra leave of absence, which was a good call because like decades later, I'm still here.
And I guess at that point, I think Elyshia was, when you told me that L'Oreal had just paid you again, you'd started working for me in rentals in Falls Creek. And, I taught her everything she knows about rentals.
She thinks.
And yeah, I think we started to maybe be more than just friends at that point. And I remember you were sitting in my room and you were like, I just got paid from my old job. And then you, please continue. I think you made a phone call and said, you guys have just paid me. I'm not coming back.
Yeah. So that was that. Kind of made the call that I was having a good time. I think I can't remember the specific moment, but I was reminding me earlier and it sounds true. So I'm going to roll with it. Sat on a chairlift, and I think anyone that's worked a life outside of snow life, you have a good time, you do what you need to do, but snow life is so different. You laundry, life tasks, all of the things, they're not a burden on your existence. They just happen because basically you need to turn up to work with clean clothes. But your life comes first, everything else comes second. I know my mom frequently was like, are you alive? It's like you live in a bubble. Yeah, I did live in a bubble. There was no traffic lights, no responsibility. I literally just needed to turn up to work, which I loved, and stoke people out on the place that we got to call home. And every spare second I had outside of that was either partying or shredding or just having hilarious chats with people on the exact same page. And I just had a moment where I was like, this is it. This is how we all should be living our lives. We should be living first and doing the mundane stuff second. And I was just like, we have to find a way to make this work.
Yeah, I think you told me that you went up to Falls Creek with your good mate Stubber, and you were sitting on the chairlift at that time feeling a bit over your corporate job. And as you were sitting on the chairlift, you were like, I want to do a ski season. Yeah, I guess, for me, which we'll touch on later, my ski journey started as a, 3-year-old kid. But for you, it was mid-20s. I don't want to live an unfulfilled life. And yeah, we came to Falls Creek, went to Colorado, came back to Falls Creek, was my employee. You and I started to kiss the employee. And then after that, we went to Bali. And
just a quick note, kissing the employee, a very consistent theme. I'm pretty sure almost every single friendship that we have that are married, 90% met the snow.
Yes, and we have a massive amount of those ex-Falls Creek humans down here in Torquay. Yes, we call it the
retirement village.
Yes. So yeah, we went to Bali. We hustled really hard, doing temp work. We had a really good time working in the Pims temp with the co-host Maddie at the Adelaide Oval. That was really fun. Outsold, nearly outsold Wimbledon. I think that test, I think it was against South Africa for 5 days of froth, and it was mainly due to me, Lysh, and Maddie being so epic behind the bar. But yeah, had a Christmas at home.
I think for both of us, the first Christmas, even though I wasn't doing snow seasons, the first Christmas in Oz for many, many years, we ended up heading over to Japan literally like 27th of December or something. And we got there and we went to Huckleberry, which was kind of Oz's. He'd been back and forwards from Huckleberry and Nisiko, and did love the place, but a whole other story. But generally, just the overall vibe was off. So, long story short, early Jan, an opportunity arose for us to head north to the amazing wonderland that is Nisiko.
And so I guess, sorry to interrupt you, darling, to touch on that story, I'd done seasons in Nisiko and in Huckleberry. And in Huckleberry, I kind of felt like a bit of an outsider. And I'd been back and forth from Huckleberry and Nisiko at the end of the season, a couple of seasons before.
Context for that, back then, when we were kids, sort of, Nisiko was still booming and growing. Huckleberry was largely undiscovered. So
Yeah.
it's not the places you know today.
But anyway, I guess the main reason why I felt this draw back to Nisiko at that point was because I'd walk into, bars like Wild Bill's, mate, rest in peace. It just recently burnt down. We love you, Bill's. I'd worked there back in 2006, and that's a story, 7, maybe 8, I don't know. But that's a story for another day. Love you, Brett. But, I'd walk into bars where I used to work, and I hadn't been back there and spent a lot of time. But people like, if you've been to Nisiko, you'd know who Wazza is. Lord Was, we love you, brother. He'd be like, welcome home, mate. Welcome home. And I just kind of didn't really get that kind of love and feeling from Huckleberry at that point that I was getting from Nisiko. So, yes, continue, Elyshia. That's my little side bit.
So we did as we both do. We kind of made a late night decision, spontaneous one, and I need to actually revisit this memory because it keeps leaving my mind. But basically, we made our decision. We had the most Japanese experience you could ever imagine. I mean that in the most beautiful way, because if you've been there, it's the most incredible country. If you haven't been there, you need to go. But you will always come back with some fab story. Both been there for 15 plus years, so many, many stories to come. But essentially, we did what Povo travellers back in the day did. We booked the longest possible and cheapest route that we could to get to Nice. Normally, you can get there in a day. We got the bus stress free. That was fine. We got to the airport. That was no problem. But I think we were flying Jetstar, like whatever the cheapest flight we could find, of course. And in the fabulous translation of Japan, our flight said worst return in English.
So to elaborate on that, what actually happened was we got on the bus. It was snowing lots. And so halfway through our bus ride, we couldn't understand what was being said. But basically what happened was the bus had been cancelled because it was snowing too much on the highway. So we, thankfully had someone who spoke enough English that we could work out what the hell was happening. And they were basically transferring us to a train because even though we were on the bus, they said your bus has now been cancelled because it's snowing too much. So we then had to jump on a train.
We were sitting on the bus and we're like, how can the bus be cancelled?
We're on it.
When we're on it. Thank the universe, there was a bilingual human on there that was like, because there's too much snow. I'm like, when they said too much, it was like 2 centimeters. Snow is very common outside of snow areas in Japan if you've been there before. And as I was going to say, we kind of boosted to a train station. We literally got off with all that we owned, boosted, jumped on this train, not knowing if it was going the right way. Turns out it was. We just followed everybody else. Ended up at the airport only to be met with a non-digital airline schedule, and that was where it said worst return. And when I Google translate that, now that I understand a bit of Japanese, conditional operation is what that meant. But worst return, we're like, what the F does that mean?
So basically, they were saying because it's snowing so much, your plane may not be able to land. You may have to turn around. So after our bus being cancelled, getting on a train, packing up our life, we were a bit stressed. Plane landed.
And fair to say, we got there, we got on the bus from Chitose, we got into Niseko, we got to the Welcome Centre. Don't even recall how we got there from there. But I was like, we have to go to Amaru.
It was the barn.
The barn.
Same owner.
And I was like, are you serious? I am like mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted. He's like, we leave us straight away. We have to go. We have to go right now. And so we did.
Background on that is I didn't have a visa. I was a legal immigrant.
No, you're on a tourist visa. You were legally there.
I was, yes, working illegally in everywhere.
You weren't working. We just relocated. You just gone to a nice place called Mexico.
Anyway, so I got Elyshia because she was legal, a job with my good friends, Brett and Takayo. Brett.
The best humans ever.
The best bartenders, Mexican makers, Hachi specialist strongers you'd ever meet. And, Brett said, I've got an opportunity for Elyshia. I think it was Daisy. Shout out Aurora and Daisy were finishing up and leaving Niseko, and Elyshia could take over their job, Daisy's job at Amaru. So I was like, I was stressed and I wanted a strong cocktail. So I was like, we need to go straight to Amaru. The barn, Jesus, to meet Brett and Tackers straight away. And I twisted Alicia's rubber arm because I wanted her to meet her new bosses and her new family. And I'll let Elyshia carry on that little bit of the story because it was hilarious.
So we got there and we went upstairs, and for those of you tuning in that do know Brett and Tackers, you know the deal. The restaurant was downstairs, which Takayo ran. The bar was upstairs that Brett and Hachi ran. For anyone that knows Brett, anyone knows Japan, there's no shoes inside. So it was slippers upstairs, some fab dad jeans, and of course a tie-dye t-shirt. Brett half lit because it was late, cranking the music before dinner service had finished. And we got to the bar and I was like, I need a mojito. And I watched this fabulous man pour 2 drinks. And I was like, there is no mix-up in that. I was like, this is why we love Brett. Anyway, no surprises. Couldn't tell you what happened for the rest of the night, but we drank some fabulous mojitos. I met some fabulous people and the journey continued.
Yeah, I guess at that point I felt like I was back home. I was stoked to introduce Lysh to my people up in Niseko. I, got Lysh that job. We ended up going to stay at Niseko Pizza's accommodation at the time. Shout out Caesar.
Oh, the Yellow House.
The Yellow House.
The inside, the snow crew from that era, the Yellow House. You all know what we're talking about. If you don't, it was just a open jail, essentially, in the best way possible.
So in saying all that, I started working there at Niseko Pizza, just helping out on the front counter. I eventually got the move up to the back of house, which is where you get looked after, and delivering pizzas. I ended up at Barumba one night with Elyshia and ran into my
Our
now
still business partner
/ future boss, Matt Hampton. And he said to me, "What are you doing back here?" And I told him I just left Huckabah. I was over it. I miss Nisiko. And he said, "Well, I'm considering opening a ski shop down there. You should go run it." And we had a yarn, had a couple of drinks, ended up delivering him a pizza a bit later. And he's like, "You're still here?" Blah, blah, blah. We ended up moving to Bamboo Lodge with the legends, the Lords, Tom Melville, who is coming up in a podcast soon, and the other legend, mate, he, rest in peace, Sam Kerr. He unfortunately died in an avalanche in
Ren.
and that's a story for another day. But it was an epic season where we got really lit and had an awesome time, especially with Tom and Sam.
And Woodbury.
And Woodbury.
So we moved just down the road from the barn, which was incredibly dangerous, but also super convenient. That was kind of our season. We just shredded a lot. Me, Hirashi, where you at? Lots of back bowls, lots of unmemorable nights. A certain night where I rolled down at 3 a.m. to try and find where my now husband was at, and was told by Ren and Sam and Ben Tom that they were just straightening him up for me. What they meant by that was they were straightening his hair, which he doesn't have anymore, with hair straighteners, his ringlet hair. So I'll leave the rest to your imagination. But we had an amazing time. Hutchie taught me the best cocktails that anyone could teach you. I'm pretty sure I finished every shift half cut. Just had the absolute time of our lives, probably knowing in the back of our brains that next season was going to be a little bit more serious. And so that was that. We had an incredible time, came back to Oz, did a fall season together.
I guess at that point as well, we kind of teamed up with the Lord, the legend, the mentor, the wizard, Dave Boyd, Lovey Boydie, to come back and work for the lift company in Australia. And at that point, Elyshia and I just wanted a foot in the door to
what was just the lift company back then.
Yeah, which was then run by Merlin, to just get a foot in the door to work in the shop.
Take over the legacy that a lot of our crew were kind of retiring from, either that season or the one after. When I say retire, just from snow life down here.
So I guess, a lot of our mates had been working up there for a really long time, and they were getting to the end of the tether. Things were changing. Things weren't as
carefree as they once were.
Yeah, and Lysh and I were still hungry. So at that point, we came in, just did the job, worked in the rental shops.
Was it 2013?
Yeah, 2013. And we kind of just were hungry to prove ourselves, and we took on every spare shift. We were there when it was unexpectedly busy. We'd get there and pull our socks up and just
get it done.
Get it done. Continue on, Lysh.
So yeah, so we did falls, and maybe we should do a fall special. So we won't kind of drill down too hard into that. Back to Japan, and we started the incredible journey with Rhythm Japan, something we've only just walked away from, and that probably deserves its own whole episode as well, but an incredible time of our lives. But we started again, not from the bottom, but we're just ready to roll our sleeves up and be part of something special, which we absolutely ended up being, but it was kind of nice as well. Oz was a ski tech. I worked in kind of customer service and back end, like CX and operations, and we just kind of stuck our teeth in and just got the vibe of the whole place. Back then, to note, there was 40 staff, including Boot Solutions, our sister business, which is wild when you think that business now has over 600 staff in a winter season. So we did that. So many funny stories, not enough time right now, but the best humans that we still call our friends right up until this day. So we did that season, lived in the Rog, just had an absolute time.
And it was a super busy winter. You know, Lysh and I were pretty determined at that point to make sure that we took every opportunity to make as much money as we could. So there was some weeks there where we were probably a little bit understaffed, but we had like a gun team. So we were working, 60, 70-hour week.
7 hour plus most of the time. We would get home from a 10 p.m. shift by 11:30,
And
I would be back at 7 a.m.
I would
next day.
dream about teching skis and talking about skis and wake up and be like, oh, I'm going to go back to work. And that was, kind of January, I guess, at that point. But it was super fun. We all pulled together and had a great time doing it. And of course, went back to Falls the next year. There was a massive change in the guard.
That was a mass exodus of our posse, essentially. It was kind of the changeover from our crew to just Austin and I starting a new snow family that we didn't birth.
So yeah, at that point, Elyshia became like kind of the
Retail manager, essentially.
and I kind of was like a lead supervisor running the shops underneath a guy who had never worked in a shop before. So yeah, I guess there was a lot of pressure on us to build a new culture, build a new team, and create some froth. And I'd like to say that we did a pretty good job.
Did a effing fabulous job at it. It was like the first toe dip into our own individual but journey together of our big journey. Fab time, lots of learnings. That's what life is about. And so we did that. And I think we dragged a good proportion of those humans back to Japan with us. We did 2 seasons in this, so we won't go too deep on that, but basically just enough that we really got a taste for Japan, what it was about, where rhythm could go, the epic legends, the logistics, the geography, all of that, and were offered an amazing experience as Rhythm opened a new location in Huckleberg. Well, actually, they had opened it. It done, I think, 1 or 2 seasons before we went down.
Yeah, it done 2 seasons, but it had gone through two managers. Gus Cutler, shout out, now the head of vertical brands for Evo and the amazing Catters. They went in and did an amazing job there. However, it was kind of a bit hard if you've got a partner who doesn't live in Japan and you've got to spend 4 months away. So it was hard.
They built the foundations to an incredible empire and set us up for success. And we went in super hungry, super long term. And not going to lie, like that first season was tough in terms of building loyalty and reputation in a town that had a lot of providers in our field, long term and ingrained in the area. It was very cliquey. It was still to boom. In saying that, though, in reflection, I think it was probably one of the biggest key learning times of our lives, and I'm incredibly thankful for it. And I still look back and think about the people we were then and how like reactive and emotional we were, and now you kind of, we've obviously grown in age and experience, but it was fab. We met so many absolute legends, probably in the exact same position as us, some wild, wild times. But I think fast forward, there's not much to tell over a few years where we just kind of grew and got to know the place, and that the next significant Japan happening was probably the pandemic.
Yeah, so I guess to elaborate a little bit on Alicia's bit there, like year 1 was hard because we were used to running a team and a business, but kind of were thrown in the deep end a little bit with HR, running lodges, all the emotions, not having a lot of support locally. So we had a lot on our plate, and we were really driven to make sure that we were successful at it. So that was a stressful winter.
So for context on that, for anyone that hasn't done a snow season, You're not working at Woolies where you just go do your job and you stack a shelf and you head home and your life problems are yours. Our staff, every single one of them, well, 99.9% are living in Eurocom. So if they've got a problem, whether it's with their room, their roommate, the lodge, life, second degree is your problem because you brought them to Japan and they don't have anyone else to turn to. Fabulous, creates incredible relationships, but as your team grows, obviously challenging when you have triple digits of humans. So it was definitely an incredible learning experience, but also when I say we worked 24/7, that is no word of a lie.
Yeah, and I guess, those 3 or 4 months of busy times, it's super condensed. Everyone lives together, they work together, they party together, they shred together, they have sex together.
Not all of them at once, just maybe
There's a couple
2 or
of
3.
pants-off parties
Anyway.
and things like that, but we won't go into that.
We didn't have kids back then as well, so it's kind of like you literally do all of the things together. You do a hard day, you go to the club together, continue partying together. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a tough first season, but we got through there and had a lot of learnings.
Baptism of fire, some might say.
And then, we were back to Falls Creek to do it all again. And I guess that circle,
the corporate vibe.
that circle continued for a few years. And then I guess before the pandemic.
Yeah, so 2016, we had a little, if anyone knows Sounds Like Cafe, if you're listening, if you don't, go to Huckleberg, go to that place. You'll eat the best chicken burger of your life, and I'll fight if you say it's not. And we had a little chat with the fab Matt Habden, and he's like, you guys are a vibe, we need to do this together. Long story short of that conversation, we very amazingly, gratefully became shareholders of Rhythm Japan. And anyone starting a business, no one will run your business like somebody that has a piece of the pie. I can tell you that right now because we took that thing on like it was our own. We did before we were shareholders, but that really cemented it. And we were so, we earned it, but so gratefully became shareholders in that business. And we had ownership over it. We sat on the newly formed leadership team and grew up essentially with a bunch of 8 or 9 of us, just incredible humans that grew Rhythm to what it is today. And
so I guess at that point we gave away Falls Creek, and it was really perfect timing for us,
which is what we wanted. So just for context as well, if you work back to backs, the minute you make yourself valuable, obviously in Australian hemisphere job, your normal the season is start of June to end of September. Japan is start of December through to the end of March. But of course, they're set up and packed down and logistics and everything that goes into that. So we were kind of faced with a period where both continents wanted us overlapping. And for probably 2 to 3 years there, we didn't get a break. We packed up one place and literally flew to the other and started again. And it's like Oz says, it's like a season is like 1 year condensed into 4. So it was a lot.
So yeah, at that point we had thankfully built a little bit of capital behind us. Good timing. We started to build this house here in the beautiful Torquay, lovely surf coast, and we're in our garage right now. And it was kind of perfect timing that we then started helping Rhythm with recruitment and building systems and training modules and documents and things that we kind of always freestyle because the business was getting bigger. And yeah, at that point, we started to get more secure in our position and more confident. And, we started to go on that hamster wheel, I guess, of doing what we thought, and I'm sure everyone will agree, was a really good job. But it just was getting bigger and bigger every year until all of a sudden there was a pandemic.
So we won't touch on that too much. This is more about the overall story, but essentially, what a wild time. Everyone's got a story about the pandemic, but essentially it kicked off in Huckleberry probably 2 to 3 weeks after Nisiko, and they were like, there's this thing going on, we're going to send people home. I'm like, what am I talking about? And then our HR manager, shout out Amanda Allen, you bloody legend, and a few other people like, and we were sort of pretty, as Oz and I are, super cash about it all. And we're like, if anyone wants to go home, go home. We don't know what this thing is or what it means, but there's obviously a lot of panic. And I was so like, I love Australia and coming back here. I love Japan in the summer, but I also like the contrast of the two places. And I was like, babe, I think we had a child by that point as well. So she was only 18 months old. And I was very like, it's a flight a week. Let's just hang out, see what it brings and take our time. No. Quickly escalated into Qantas is ceasing all flights as of this Friday. So we were like, wow.
Can I quickly backtrack and add to that? I remember we had the first snow machine coming to Huckleberry, which meant that we were going to get thousands of guests. And
shout out to Quinton and Mountain Watch.
One of our biggest days in Huckleberry at that point. And I remember me and Elyshia had a day off and we went to the Nagano Zoo to try and entertain a small child at the time. And Matt called me while I was at the zoo, being like, I think we need to close. I think we need to like get everyone out of the country. This is going to kick off. And I was like, we can't do that right now in Huckleberry, mate. Like, we have a festival coming, like thousands. And by the time that all these thousands of guests came, which was like just before the no travel cutoff, Japan had said it's not a good idea for you to travel, no big gatherings of people. But, Quinton and Snow Machine were too deep at that point
it was on.
There was no way to stop it. So shout out to
we also didn't. None of us had any concept.
Yeah, shout out to Quinton for holding his nerve through all of that, because it was pretty epic. We had super busy week. Nisiko at that point was spiraling with COVID cases. Huckleberry hadn't really.
We were so busy that we didn't even make it to Snow Machine. Us, like we didn't. It was so busy.
But, we got through that. We ended up having to pull retail boots off the shelf to do rentals with them. It was hectic, but we got through it. And then basically after that, it was as Lysh said, we went from, should be right, maybe we'll have to stay here for summer. And I was like, nah, we should go home, to, okay, everyone needs to get, excuse my French, the fuck out of here now. 90% of our staff jumped on a plane within the next couple of days, and a couple like the legend Joe Cooper hung around, which ended up being a great thing for him because he got to hang around for the next 2 winters.
But we got on a flight. It was me, Oz, our now almost 7-year-old Mahalia, Ross, who's the head of merch for Rhythm still, Tom, our operations manager for Huckleberry,
who was there when Lysh broke.
Yep. So we ended up getting on a flight, Mahalia for the first and likely last time on our watch, Flew Business. We were legitimately on the last Qantas flight out of Japan, not really realizing what we're in the depths of. Even the hosties, I don't think they knew, but there was people there being like, this is probably my last flight ever. And
So they rolled out the free champagne.
I was lit when I got like, there's no doubt.
Because like all the hosties are like, I think I'm about to be laid off here. What do you like? Drink as much as
we just didn't know. We'd been living in the Japan bubble, and we so fortunately landed back here 5 days out of before they implemented
strict hotel
quarantine. So we very fortunately got to quarantine at home. Wild to think about how much stuff changes in a very short span of time. That was, 2020. The only people that could do an online Woolies order at that time were people that were elderly that couldn't get themselves transport, or people that were proved hotel or home quarantine. So we quarantined actually over my birthday with Uncle Ross and Uncle Tomo and Mahalia, who was having the absolute time of her life because her two uncles were stuck in the house for 2 weeks. Needless to say, I had 3 birthday cakes, lots of margaritas. Thanks, Bridge and Kev, for all of the deliveries. Fab time, hung out here. Fast forward through the next little bit, we were just pretty much in a holding pattern because Japan took 2 years to figure out what they were doing internationally. Again, just to kind of, I guess, condense those 2 years, we were just in a pattern of how do we pivot the business to domestic only, working finance, strategy and operations, several different scenarios of how do we keep this business alive. Japan was amazing with subsidies and whatnot, but I guess the important part of this chat is none of that boring stuff. It was more like we had some of the best, most memorable powdays of our, I'm not going to swear, but effing lives. So again, we were tag teaming, dropping a small human to nursery school every day in Japan, which is very regimented in terms of time. We used to argue about it, who was going to get fresh traps and who was doing school drop-off. There was no arguing. There was no tourists. We would drop her off together. We'd go to the resort. There's no side country. There's no back country. You're getting on a lift. You are getting the deepest power turns of your life, lift accessed until your legs don't work anymore. That was every day. We went from a team of almost 100 staying in Huckabee across the business, probably like 50.
Yeah, and the beauty of it was because Japan was so good with subsidies, me and Lysh kind of worked every day, but we could take most mornings off. But all of our staff at the time, including our more senior staff, could work 2 to 3 days a week. The government would subsidise the other 2 to 3
They were
days.
really big on people staying at home. So they would literally pay you to stay at home, and it was only a percentage of your income, but obviously more than enough to survive on at that point.
Yeah, that was a golden era. Was a sponsored skier and whatnot, and had been too busy managing businesses to like get any footage or photos and stuff like that. But all of the business owners in Huckabee for those 2 years, we would pretty much see, because we were all too busy in the middle of.
And also, sorry to say this, like as in we were shredding. There's been years where we have not shredded until I've got like photographic evidence that we have not gotten on snow till 26, 27, 28th of December, sometimes Jan, I think early December. And we never ride Hapo either because just busy. And I, like Oz was talking about, I remember riding Hapo with
The gorilla.
a bunch of our crew, and like I was saying, probably 20, 25 plus of us deep, all business owners, where you never see the Econ managers during the winter because they are just getting destroyed by dealing with guests. Hooting, hollering, hitting every lift line, hitting every line together.
Yeah.
Not a care in the world. It was the most soul-filling, incredible, never forgettable experience ever.
Yeah. So, like mates who brand lodges started going, I'm just going to like film all season and do all of this. And pretty much every good day you would see the same humans in the lift line every morning, and you'd all smile and froth out and have the best days. So even though this is the first winter that I've missed in Japan in 10 bloody years, I think, apart from one in France, and it's the best in 60 years. So you can all thank me for not being there, because it's obviously thanks to me. I don't think, considering the lack of crowds, anything will beat those 2 winters, apart from, as Matt Hampton would say, being in Niseko in 2005. And, I was in Niseko 2007, I was in Huckabee 2011, ate, and, you know, they were epic. But I obviously knew the areas so much better in that after such a long experience. So yes, that was a golden era. Leash, go on to.
So I think that's just that was definitely a massive highlight in our lives. And like, obviously it's very difficult when you're in the middle of something where you don't know what it holds, where it's going to end or whatever. But I think we were the fittest we've been in our life. We were the most cup filled. We got the most shred days in, just so many positives on top of the stress of keeping a business afloat and staff feeling secure and all of that. But I look back now and I'm like, what an incredible time. Japan, as it is, hurry slowly. Didn't open the borders until the 11th hour the next winter, which is all good. But I guess to summarize from there, there's not a lot more to tell other than as we did at Rhythm, we kind of, over 20% year over year growth, which is just insanity. They're still continuing and blowing that out of the water, which love you, legends. We just went back to the schmear, which is what we do best. We've got those glory days to remember. But
To add on to that, and especially, Rhythm didn't put their head in the sand through COVID. We
we're always ready.
Committed to a ski school. We opened a new shop in Huckabee, and then that put us in perfect place to then pivot, keep firing, and step it up as soon as the travel bug came back after everyone not being able to travel. So now Huckabee has 3 shops, the ski school's firing.
Our hotel, all the rest. So I think long story short of our journey is that it's not a lot of specific things to tell after that post-COVID era other than we just kept growing and growing and growing. Oz and I wrapped up our full-time with Rhythm last August, and at count for this winter, the team that we started with, I think 15 people, ended up being 130 odd this year. So you can kind of see the scale of how big it's gotten. It was an incredibly emotional time for us to step away, but it was also time to hand over the reins to people much like ourselves, super hungry to take on the next chapter and journey and growth of their life. A 6.5-year-old and an almost 3-year-old who the oldest one in particular wanted some stability. We still have a home there. We love it. And I guess full circle of where we started the thing was as Oz said, he left Huckabee wanting to go home to Nisiko, and I don't disagree with that. We've got friends all over the globe. My business partner, friends in NZ, a bunch of people that started and finished their journey there that are now elsewhere that we literally call family. But if you had to make us choose, and there's obviously a lot of specifics to this and why, I think, full circle, we would choose Huckabee. We still have a home there. Like, we own a house there, hands down. And it's nothing to do with anything specific. We still have beautiful friends in Nis. We have beautiful friends in Huckabee. We have friends in Verano. We have friends in Okinawa. We have friends everywhere. But if you kind of, I guess, put together the geographical positives, the mountains, the historic kind of history of Japan, just so many different factors, access to Tokyo, access to different parts is, I love Nis and I love every moment that I go back there and the people we get to see. But also with Huckabee, we're taking a couple of winters off. We want to go back as full-fledged punters, like full punters, like, the ones that are annoying. They're like, hey, do you want to go out to dinner tonight, tomorrow night, the next night? We're going to do that. And I can't wait to take the kids back and just...
We just need to wait for our youngest to be old enough to be able to shred properly. She's still 2.5, so hopefully get her back up at Falls this year. But yeah, Huckabee is now home, as well as Nisiko, which is not how I felt when we first went back down there.
As is Torquay, which is where we are now. So it's I guess this whole first episode is about, there's so much more to it, so much more we can go into, but essentially it's, how did our journey start? You've got that. We're in Torquay. There's so much more to spill on how we're still in the snow world. despite being in a surf town 5 hours away from the closest resort. Much more to go into as you meet different guests that are also down here in the snow world. But basically, Japan still lives in us. There's parts of us still in Japan. And if it wasn't for Japan, there wouldn't be us, there wouldn't be our kids, there wouldn't be the friendships that we have, there wouldn't be the legacy we've left with Japan, and Japan has left with us and rhythm. And yeah, part one of Lysh Aus.
Yes, I guess this episode was mainly based on kind of Alicia's story and our story. So yeah, it'll be more about me and Maddie and our journey. We obviously went to school together. Maddie's the Asia Pacific GM of Smith Optics. And yeah, I guess, last final thing to touch on with Huckabee versus Niseko is I love my ramen and I love my soup curry. And I think that
Pizza.
Niseko Hokkaido has the best spicy miso ramen. In saying that, shout out to Takahashi. I never thought that I'd like a non-broth ramen as much as I like that.
As you age a little bit, maybe. Soba. Nagano is the home of soba. Ricky soba. Get around it.
So normally we'll do like a little segment in each episode, which is what is the weirdest or the strangest or the funniest thing you've seen in a ski resort. We're going to make you wait for that one.
I'm about to pee myself, in all honesty, which if anyone knows me, it's pretty standard. I reckon Mills and I can probably do an entire teaser / episode on inappropriate, terrifying snow stories. So you just have to wait.
You will have to wait for that one. Thank you for listening in, and only friends on a power day. Peace out, legends.
Don't pee myself.